The Galactic Military Academy had processed over 40 million cadets across 300 years of operation. And in all that time, the sorting algorithm had never once made an error until the day it encountered a species it had never been properly programmed to understand. Ensign Lena Vasquez stood in the transport bay with her single regulation duffel bag, watching through the viewport as the massive station grew larger against the backdrop of distant stars. She had dreamed of this moment since childhood, and now here she was, one of the first humans ever accepted into the prestigious academy that trained the galaxy's finest soldiers. The station was enormous, a spinning wheel of metal and light that housed over 100,000 cadets from nearly every known sapient species. Lena had read about it in the recruitment materials, had memorized the layouts and the course schedules and the names of famous graduates who had gone on to become legends in their respective militaries. What she had not read about was the paperwork error that would change everything. Deep within the administrative core of the academy, 2 separate computer systems processed her application file at exactly the same moment. The first was a civilian sorting algorithm designed by the Velith, a gentle herbivorous species, known throughout the galaxy for their bureaucratic precision and their complete inability to understand predator biology. The algorithm scanned her species classification: Homo sapiens, origin, Earth, biological category, persistence, predator. The Velith programmers had never encountered this term before. In their experience, predators came in 2 varieties: ambush hunters, who struck fast and hard, or pack hunters who overwhelmed prey through numbers. The concept of a predator that simply followed its prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion was so alien to their understanding that the algorithm flagged it as an obvious data entry error. Surely the file meant to say prey species with predatory tendencies, a common classification for omnivores who occasionally ate meat but posed no real threat. The algorithm helpfully auto-corrected the classification and assigned Ensign Vasquez to prey-adjacent studies, Track 7, where she would learn alongside other harmless species how to support the real warriors from safe positions behind the front lines. But at that exact same moment, a second system processed her file, an ancient military subroutine that had been installed during the Rim Wars, when the Academy needed to quickly identify any species with combat potential. This system cared nothing for nuance or context. It simply scanned for keywords, and the word predator in any biological file triggered an automatic flag. The subroutine overrode the civilian classification and assigned Ensign Vasquez to Apex Predator Combat Training, Class Null 7, the most elite and dangerous training program the Academy offered. Neither system detected the conflict. Neither system notified an administrator. The 2 assignments merged into a single file that was stamped, approved, and filed away without any living being ever looking at it. And so Lena Vasquez, armed with nothing but her orientation packet and her enthusiasm, followed the directions on her tablet to Training Arena 7, completely unaware that she was walking into a room full of the deadliest sapient beings in the known galaxy. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and Lena stepped inside, then stopped as every head in the room turned to face her. The arena was vast, a circular space with high ceilings and walls lined with weapons and training equipment. But Lena barely noticed the architecture because her attention was captured entirely by the creatures who occupied it. Nearest to her stood a group of Krethver, 8-limbed insectoids whose mandibles dripped with paralytic venom. Each one stood nearly 7 feet tall, their chitinous armor gleaming under the harsh training lights, and their compound eyes reflected her image 1,000 times over as they stared at her in obvious confusion. Beyond them, a cluster of Sarkathi dominated the center of the room. These were massive reptilian beings, each one over 8 feet tall and weighing at least 500 pounds of pure muscle. They had evolved on a high-gravity death world where everything was trying to kill everything else, and their ancestors had risen to the top of the food chain through sheer brutal efficiency. Their 4 eyes blinked in sequence as they regarded the small creature that had just entered their domain. In the far corner, a group of Valesi watched with predatory stillness. These were sleek, serpentine hunters whose scales could shift color to match any environment. They could see in infrared, hear heartbeats from across a room, and strike faster than most species could blink. Right now, they were very, very still, trying to determine if this tiny intruder was a threat or simply lost. Lena was 5 feet 4 inches tall. She weighed 130 pounds. She had no claws, no venom, no armor, no fangs. By every measure the assembled predators understood, she should not have been able to survive in any environment more dangerous than a climate-controlled garden. And yet she smiled at them, a bright, friendly smile that showed her teeth, and asked in a cheerful voice, "Hi there. Is this Apex Combat Training, Class 07? I think I am supposed to be here." The room went completely silent. From a raised platform at the far end of the arena, a voice rumbled like boulders grinding together. It belonged to Senior Combat Instructor Thorax Krenfith, a Sarkathi who had personally killed 37 enemy combatants during the Rim Wars and had trained 3 generations of the galaxy's most feared warriors. He rose from his observation chair and descended the steps slowly, his massive clawed feet striking the metal floor with heavy thuds that echoed through the silent arena. He crossed the training floor, passing between his frozen cadets, until he stood directly in front of the human female who barely reached his chest. His 4 eyes examined her with the careful attention of a being who had survived countless battles by never underestimating anything. He noted her soft skin that looked like it would tear at the slightest touch, her flat teeth that seemed designed for nothing more threatening than chewing plants, her small size and apparent lack of any natural weapons. But he also noted that she had not flinched when he approached. Her heartbeat, which his sensitive hearing could detect, had remained steady and calm. And she continued to meet his gaze directly, something that no prey species would ever do voluntarily. "There's been an error," Thorax said, his voice a low growl that made several of the younger cadets take involuntary steps backward. Lena tilted her head slightly, her smile never wavering. "Oh, I do not think so," she said, pulling out her tablet and showing him the assignment screen. "See? Ensign Lena Vasquez, Homo sapiens, assigned to Apex Predator Combat Training, Class 07. The paperwork seems pretty clear to me." Thorax stared at the tablet, then at the human, then back at the tablet. In 300 years of Academy operation, the system had never made an error, which meant either the universe had finally gone insane, or there was something about this small, soft, smiling creature that he did not yet understand. He would soon learn that the second option was correct, and the lesson would change everything he thought he knew about what it meant to be a predator. Academy protocol was very clear about situations like this. Before any cadet could be transferred or reassigned, they had to complete a baseline assessment to determine their true capabilities. Instructor Thorax had overseen hundreds of these assessments, and he was absolutely certain that this one would prove beyond any doubt that the human female did not belong in his class. He led Lena to the assessment chamber, while the other cadets followed at a respectful distance, their curiosity overwhelming their usual predatory composure. None of them had ever seen a human before, and they were eager to watch this small creature fail spectacularly so that the natural order of things could be restored. The assessment chamber was a marvel of military engineering, a vast space that could simulate any environment from frozen tundras to boiling deserts, from dense jungles to the vacuum of space. Today, Thorax programmed it for the Endurance Gauntlet, a 12-hour survival simulation designed to push even the strongest Apex-class cadets to their absolute limits. "The rules are simple," Thorax explained as Lena stretched her arms above her head, in what appeared to be some kind of warm-up ritual. You will run through changing terrain while avoiding obstacles and simulated predators. The course will adapt to challenge you. You must survive for 12 hours or until you collapse. Most cadets of your apparent fitness level last approximately 1 hour. Lena nodded thoughtfully as she touched her toes, then twisted her torso from side to side. 12 hours of running sounds pretty reasonable, she said casually. Back on Earth, we have this thing called an ultramarathon where people run for 24 hours straight just for fun. I never did one of those, but I did complete a few regular marathons in college. The assembled predators exchanged confused glances. They did not understand what a marathon was, but the humans seemed to think 12 hours of continuous physical exertion was somehow normal for her species. Thorax dismissed her words as nervous boasting and activated the simulation. The chamber floor transformed into rough terrain rocks and hills, and uneven ground that would test balance and coordination. Lena began to jog at an easy pace, her feet finding stable footing with each step, her breathing slow and controlled. The other cadets entered the simulation as well, spreading out across the terrain as they each began their own assessments. The Krethver skittered forward on their 8 limbs with impressive speed, their chitinous legs eating up the ground. The Sarkathi thundered along with powerful strides that shook the earth. The Valesi darted and weaved with serpentine grace. Within the first hour, it became clear that the human was the slowest runner in the entire group. Every other cadet could outpace her without any difficulty at all. The predators began to relax, confident that their initial assessment had been correct. This soft little creature would tire soon and prove herself unworthy of their company. But an hour passed, and the human kept running. 2 hours passed, and her pace remained exactly the same. Not fast, not impressive, but steady and unchanging. She moved like a machine that knew nothing of fatigue. 3 hours in, the first Krethver began to struggle. Their 8 limbs, designed for short bursts of incredible speed, were not built for sustained effort. One by one, they dropped out of the simulation, their muscles cramping and their breathing ragged. The human jogged past them without comment, her expression focused but calm. 4 hours, then 5, then 6. The Valesi were the next to fall. Their bodies were optimized for explosive strikes and rapid movement, but their fast-twitch muscles burned through energy at an unsustainable rate. They collapsed with frustrated hisses, unable to believe that the tiny human was still moving while they could not continue. 7 hours, 8 hours, 9. Even the mighty Sarkathi was showing signs of strain. Their powerful legs, which could crush stone and leap incredible distances, were not designed for this kind of relentless, unending pursuit. Their cooling systems struggled to keep up with the heat generated by hours of continuous exertion. And still the human ran. Her body had found a rhythm that she could maintain indefinitely, a pace that her ancestors had perfected over millions of years of evolution on the African plains. This was the secret weapon of humanity, the terrifying adaptation that had allowed soft, clawless, fangless primates to become the dominant predators of their world. They did not need to be faster than their prey, because they would never, ever stop. Lena was not chasing the other cadets. She was not even competing with them. She was simply moving forward, one foot in front of the other, her breathing steady, her heartbeat calm, her mind settled into that meditative state that long-distance runners know so well. At the 10-hour mark, only 3 beings remained in the simulation: Lena and 2 Sarkathi cadets named Vorath and Kasix. Both of the reptilians were struggling visibly, their movements becoming sluggish, their 4 eyes beginning to glaze with exhaustion. Kasix fell first, his legs simply refusing to carry him any further. He crashed to the ground with a roar of frustration and shame, unable to believe that he had been outlasted by a creature half his size. Vorath pushed on through sheer willpower, determined not to be defeated by an impossible opponent. But at the 11-hour mark, his body betrayed him. His legs cramped so severely that he collapsed to his knees with a bellow of pain. Lena stopped running. For a moment, the assembled observers thought she had finally reached her limit. But no, she had stopped because she had noticed a fellow cadet in distress. She jogged back to where Vorath knelt on the ground, his massive body trembling with exhaustion, his pride shattered. She pulled out her water canteen and offered it to him without hesitation. "First time doing something like this?" she asked kindly, her voice only slightly breathless after 11 hours of continuous running. Vorath looked up at her with all four eyes, and for the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine awe directed at a creature he should have been able to crush with one hand. "How?" he managed to rasp. "How are you still standing?" Lena shrugged as she helped him stretch out his cramping muscles. "Humans are built for this," she explained simply. "Our bodies regulate heat really efficiently. We can carry water and food with us, and our leg muscles are designed for exactly this kind of sustained effort. Back in the old days, our ancestors used to hunt by just following animals until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. We call it persistence hunting." In the observation booth above the chamber, Instructor Thorax watched the footage with growing unease. He had seen many impressive physical feats in his long career, but nothing had ever disturbed him quite like this. The human had not won through speed or strength or any quality he understood. She had won by simply refusing to stop. She had turned endurance into a weapon, patience into a predatory advantage. He thought about what it would be like to be hunted by such a creature, to run and run and run, only to look back and see that same steady figure still following. Never gaining but never falling behind. Always there, always coming. Until eventually you had nothing left to give. For the first time in decades, Instructor Thorax felt something cold settle into his bones, something that might have been called fear. He watched the footage 3 more times, and with each viewing, his unease grew deeper. The transfer paperwork could wait. He needed to understand what exactly he was dealing with before he decided what to do with Ensign Lena Vasquez. The corrected paperwork arrived on Instructor Thorax's desk exactly 47 days after Ensign Lena Vasquez first walked into his training arena. It came with a formal apology from Central Administration, an explanation of the algorithm error that had caused the misassignment, and official transfer orders to move the human to a more appropriate training track. Thorax should have signed the papers immediately and sent the human away. That would have been the proper procedure, the expected response, the easy solution to a bureaucratic problem. But he did not sign. Instead, he set the transfer orders aside and opened the attached file, the full, unredacted species assessment for Homo sapiens that the original sorting algorithm had so catastrophically misunderstood. He read it once quickly, his 4 eyes scanning the text with growing disbelief. Then he read it again slowly, making sure he understood every word. Then he read it a 3rd time, and a 4th. And by the 5th reading, his claws had carved deep furrows into the surface of his metal desk. The file began with basic biology, but even the basics were alarming. Humans were classified as persistence predators, a category so rare in the Galactic database that it had only appeared twice before in recorded history. Unlike ambush predators, who struck fast, or pack hunters who overwhelmed through numbers, persistence predators employed a completely different strategy. They did not chase their prey to catch it. They chased their prey until it literally died of exhaustion. Human ancestors on the plains of Earth had developed a hunting technique called persistence hunting, where they would follow a target animal for hours or even days, never sprinting, never rushing, just maintaining a steady, relentless pace that their prey could not match. The animal would run and run, certain that it was escaping, but every time it stopped to rest, the humans would appear on the horizon, Still coming, still following, never giving up. Eventually, the prey would collapse, its body overheated, its muscles cramped, its spirit broken, and only then would the humans close in for the kill. They did not need speed or strength or natural weapons because they had something far more terrifying: patience. Thorax thought about the endurance gauntlet, about watching this small creature outlast every predator in his class through nothing more than steady, unending forward motion. He understood now that he had not been watching an anomaly. He had been watching a species doing exactly what it had evolved to do. The file continued with a section on human threat displays, and here Thorax found the explanation for the constant smiling that had so unnerved his cadets. In most sapient species, the baring of teeth was a warning, a signal that violence was imminent and that the displayer was prepared to fight. But humans had evolved to use this aggressive gesture as a form of social bonding within their pack structures. They smiled at friends and allies, smiled at strangers they wished to befriend, smiled at potential mates and at their own children. This seemed harmless until the file explained the evolutionary reasoning. Humans were social predators who needed to maintain cohesion within their hunting groups, and normalizing aggressive displays within the pack allowed them to transition instantly from friendly cooperation to coordinated violence without any warning signs. A smiling human could turn into an attacking human in less than a second, with no change in expression to alert the target. The section on human physiology was equally disturbing. Humans possessed an adaptation called the adrenaline response, which allowed them to temporarily enhance their physical abilities under stress. When threatened, their bodies would flood with hormones that increased strength, speed, pain tolerance, and reaction time. Most species responded to danger by fleeing. Humans responded to danger by becoming more dangerous. And then there was the matter of their senses. Human eyes were positioned at the front of their skulls, giving them binocular vision with excellent depth perception, the universal mark of a predator species that needed to judge distances for striking at prey. Their hearing could detect a wide range of frequencies, and their pattern recognition abilities were so advanced that they could identify faces, track movement, and predict trajectories with remarkable accuracy. But the detail that truly chilled Thorax's blood came in the section about human social behavior. Humans, the file explained, had a unique tendency to form bonds with other predator species. On their homeworld, they had encountered wolves pack hunting apex predators with sharp teeth and powerful jaws, and instead of competing with them or avoiding them, humans had somehow convinced the wolves to join them. Over thousands of years, humans had domesticated these deadly hunters, transforming them into loyal companions who would fight and die at human command. They had taken a species that should have been their rival and made it into their weapon. And they had not stopped with wolves. Humans had formed similar bonds with birds of prey, with large cats, with any creature they found useful. They did not simply tolerate other predators, they absorbed them into their pack structure. Thorax looked up from the file and stared at the far wall of his office, his mind racing with implications. If humans could befriend wolves, they could befriend anything. If they could turn competitors into allies, they could turn enemies into friends. And if even one human could outlast, outrack, and outthink an entire class of trained predators, what could a whole civilization of humans accomplish? He turned to the final page of the file, where a xenobiologist had added a personal note, a warning for anyone who encountered this species. Humans call their form of hunting the chase, the note read. But this term is misleading. They do not chase. They follow, relentlessly, inevitably, across any terrain, through any obstacle, for any duration necessary. The prey can run. The prey can hide. But the human will appear again, and again, and again, until the prey simply stops. The note continued with a chilling conclusion. Do not mistake their small size or apparent fragility for weakness. Do not assume their friendly demeanor means they are harmless. And above all, do not run from them. Running is what their prey does, and humans are very, very good at catching prey. Thorax set down the file and turned to look at his security monitor, which showed a live feed of the mess hall. There, at a table in the center of the room, sat Ensign Lena Vasquez, eating lunch with a group of Apex cadets. The sight should have been absurd, this tiny creature surrounded by beings who could tear her apart with a single blow, but instead it looked perfectly natural. Lena was laughing at something Vorath had said, and the massive Sarkathy was leaning toward her with an expression that looked almost shy. The Krethver cadets had arranged themselves around her protectively. Even Sirith was sitting nearby, her earlier hostility apparently forgotten. They had accepted her. Without any conscious decision, without any formal ceremony, the deadliest predators in the Academy had recognized the human as one of their own. Thorax looked down at the transfer orders on his desk, official documents that would remove this fascinating, terrifying creature from his class and send her away to learn alongside harmless omnivores who would never understand what she truly was. He picked up the papers, held them for a long moment, and then fed them into the incinerator beside his desk. He watched them burn until nothing remained but ash. Whatever Lena Vasquez was, she belonged here. He had seen what she could do, had read what her species was capable of, and he was not foolish enough to let that potential go to waste. Besides, he thought with something that might have been a smile. The Academy's mission was to train the galaxy's finest warriors, and if humans could turn wolves into allies, perhaps they could do the same with Sarkathy and Krethver and Valesi. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and Thorax had just discovered a new kind of danger, the kind that smiled at you while planning to follow you until you dropped. He wanted that danger on his side. News traveled fast in the Galactic Military Academy, and within days of the Endurance Gauntlet, every cadet on the station had heard the story of the tiny human who had outlasted the entire Apex Predator class. Most dismissed it as exaggeration or rumor, but those who had witnessed it firsthand knew the truth, and the truth was deeply unsettling. The Apex cadets of Class 07 began watching their new classmate with a careful attention they normally reserved for dangerous enemies. What they observed only increased their confusion and their growing sense of unease. First, there was the matter of eye contact. In galactic culture, direct eye contact meant different things to different species. For some, it was a dominance challenge. For others, a mating signal, and for many prey species, it was simply something to be avoided at all costs when facing a predator. But Lena made direct eye contact with everyone, all the time, regardless of species or status. She would look right into the compound eyes of the Krethver without flinching. She would meet the four-eyed gaze of the Sarkathy and hold it steady. She would stare at the Valesi, even when their pupils contracted to predatory slits. And through it all, she would smile. The smiling that was the second unsettling thing. In nearly every known culture, the baring of teeth was a threat display, a warning that violence was imminent. But humans apparently used this aggressive gesture as a form of social bonding. Lena smiled when she greeted people, smiled when she thanked them, smiled when she was happy or amused or simply being polite. The other predators did not know how to interpret this constant threat display. Was she challenging them? Was she warning them? Or was she somehow so confident in her ability to survive that she felt no need to hide her weapons? Then there was the matter of her diet. Lena ate things that would kill most sapient species without any apparent concern. One morning in the mess hall, a Krethver cadet named Chitrix watched in horror as Lena poured a dark liquid into her mouth and swallowed it with obvious pleasure. "What is that substance?" Chitrix demanded, his antennae twitching with alarm. "Coffee," Lena replied cheerfully. It is a drink made from roasted beans. It contains caffeine, which helps me wake up in the morning. Chitrix's mandibles clicked in distress. Caffeine was classified as a Class 3 neurotoxin on 18 different worlds. It could cause heart failure in Valesi, permanent nerve damage in Krethvar, and was outright fatal to several herbivorous species. Yet, this human consumed it recreationally, multiple times every single day. Even more alarming was her fondness for capsaicin, a chemical compound that triggered pain receptors so intensely that it was used in military-grade deterrent sprays. Lena put this substance on her food voluntarily, claiming that it added flavor and helped clear her sinuses. The predators of Class 07 began to wonder if perhaps this small creature was not as harmless as she appeared. Any being that voluntarily consumed neurotoxins and chemical weapons as part of their regular diet was clearly operating on a different level of existence. But the most disturbing revelation came 3 weeks into the term, when a training accident left Lena with a deep gash across her forearm. The injury happened during a close-quarters combat exercise. A Sarkathi cadet named Drexus misjudged his strike, and his claw caught Lena's arm, tearing through her uniform and leaving a wound that exposed muscle and dripped red blood onto the training mat. Drexus froze in horror, certain that he had killed the human or at least crippled her permanently. He began stammering apologies, his 4 eyes wide with guilt and fear of the punishment that would surely follow. But Lena just looked down at her arm with a calm expression. "Oh, that is a pretty deep cut," she observed, as if discussing the weather. "I should probably go to medical and get it cleaned up." She walked herself to the medical bay, leaving a trail of blood drops behind her, apparently unconcerned about the injury that would have incapacitated most species. The medical staff treated her wound and predicted a recovery time of at least 6 to 8 weeks. They prepared regeneration therapy equipment and scheduled follow-up appointments to monitor the healing process. But when Lena returned for her 2-week checkup, the doctors discovered something that they could not explain. The wound had almost completely closed on its own. New tissue had grown over the damaged area, leaving only a raised scar where the gash had been. "Your body just did this by itself?" the lead physician asked, his tentacles twitching with scientific excitement. "Without any regeneration therapy?" Lena shrugged, as if this was perfectly normal. "Humans heal pretty fast," she explained. "Our cells are really good at replicating and repairing damage. I once broke my arm as a kid, and the bone grew back together in about 6 weeks." The physician immediately requested permission to study human biology in more detail. The concept of autonomous cellular regeneration at this speed was nearly unheard of among galactic species. Most beings required medical intervention to repair serious injuries, but humans apparently just fixed themselves. Word of the miraculous healing spread through the academy, adding another layer of mystique to the already legendary human. But the event that truly cemented Lena's reputation among the predators came during a tactical exercise in the 6th week of training. A Valesi cadet named Sirith had been struggling with the loss of status that came from being outlasted by a human. Her people were proud hunters, apex predators who had ruled their homeworld for millions of years, and the idea that this small, soft creature was somehow their equal was intolerable. Sirith challenged Lena to a tracking exercise, confident that she could restore predator-class honor by defeating the human at a game of hide-and-seek. The rules were simple: Sirith would hide, and Lena would have 1 hour to find her. If Lena failed, she would admit publicly that she did not belong in Apex class. The other cadets gathered to watch, expecting an easy victory for the Valesi. Sirith was the finest tracker in her cohort, blessed with infrared vision that could detect body heat through walls, sound-sensitive frills that could hear a heartbeat from 50 meters away, and 12 generations of hunter genetics running through her veins. Sirith disappeared into the training maze, using every trick she knew to mask her presence. She found the perfect hiding spot, a thermally insulated alcove that would mask her heat signature, surrounded by materials that absorbed sound. She pressed herself into the shadows, her scales shifting color to match the wall behind her, and waited for the human to stumble past. Minutes passed in perfect silence. Cirith heard Lena enter the maze, heard her footsteps moving through the corridors, heard them getting closer and then farther away. Clearly, the human was searching randomly, unable to detect any trace of her quarry. Cirith allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. Soon this farce would be over, and the natural order would be restored. "Found you," said a voice from directly behind her. Cirith spun with her fangs bared and her claws extended, her hunting instincts screaming that a predator had somehow gotten behind her without any warning. But it was just Lena, standing calmly at the entrance to the alcove, her hands in her pockets and a small smile on her face. "Impossible," Cirith hissed. "I left no trail. I made no sound. My heat signature was completely masked." "How did you find me?" Lena tilted her head thoughtfully. "Well, when you grabbed that railing on the way in, you left a partial heat print that was still visible when I came through. Then I noticed that the dust on the floor was slightly disturbed in this direction. And once I got close, I could hear your breathing change when you thought I was near. For the last 10 minutes, I have been listening to your heartbeat and tracking your position by sound alone." She tapped her ear with one finger. Human hearing is not as good as Velesi hearing, but it is good enough when you know what to listen for. Cirith's frills pressed flat against her skull, the Velesi expression of pure, primal terror. She had not been found by a lucky amateur. She had been tracked by a skilled hunter who understood exactly how to find hidden prey. The human had stalked a stalker, and she had made it look easy. From that day forward, no one in Class 07 questioned whether Lena belonged among them. They had seen what she could do, and they had learned to fear it. 6 months had passed since the day a paperwork error dropped a human into the most dangerous training program the Galactic Military Academy had ever created. And in that time, everything had changed. Class 07 had transformed from a collection of rival predators into something far more powerful. A unified pack that fought as one, thought as one, and would die for each other without hesitation. The cadets who had once viewed Lena Vasquez as an intruder now considered her an essential part of their group. And she had earned that place through sweat and determination and an endless willingness to keep going when others would have quit. The graduation ceremony was held in the Academy's Grand Hall, a vast chamber designed to impress and intimidate visitors from across the galaxy. Representatives from 37 different species had traveled to witness the event, including admirals and generals and military attaches, who had heard rumors about this unusual class and wanted to see for themselves if the stories were true. They were not disappointed. The graduates of Class 07 marched into the hall in perfect formation, their movements synchronized in a way that spoke of countless hours of training together. The Krethver moved on their 8 limbs with fluid precision. The Sarkathi walked with earth-shaking steps that somehow stayed in rhythm with their smaller companions. The Velesi glided with predatory grace. And in the center of the formation, keeping pace with beings 3 times her size, walked Ensign Lena Vasquez. The assembled dignitaries whispered among themselves as the class took their positions on the main stage. Many had never seen a human before, and they were surprised by how small and fragile she appeared next to her towering classmates. How could such a creature possibly belong among the galaxy's deadliest predators? Senior Combat Instructor Thorax Krenth stood at the podium, his formal uniform bearing the medals and honors of a lifetime of service. He had trained more warriors than he could count, had sent generations of predators out into the galaxy to defend their peoples and fight their wars, but he had never felt quite the way he felt today. He began the ceremony with the traditional words, speaking of duty and honor and the responsibilities that came with being trained to kill. He presented each graduate with their commendation, acknowledging their achievements and welcoming them into the ranks of the galaxy's elite warriors. But when he reached Ensign Vasquez, he paused. The hall went silent as the ancient Sarkathy looked down at the young human who stood at attention before him. She met his four-eyed gaze without flinching, her posture perfect, her expression calm and confident. She had learned much in 6 months, but in many ways she was exactly the same as the day she had first walked into his arena, still small, still soft-skinned, still smiling with her teeth showing. "When you arrived," Thorax said, his rumbling voice carrying across the silent hall and reaching every ear in the chamber, "I believed there had been an error. I was certain that the system had malfunctioned, but some glitch had placed you where you did not belong. I prepared your transfer papers and waited only for the official authorization to send you away." The dignitary shifted uncomfortably. Was the instructor about to embarrass this cadet in front of the entire galaxy? But Thorax was not finished. "I was correct," he continued, his voice dropping to a tone that his students had learned to recognize as deadly serious. "There had been an error, but the error was mine." He reached into his ceremonial sash and withdrew an object that made the assembled audience gasp with shock, a curved blade about a foot long, its edge gleaming with deadly sharpness, its handle wrapped in leather that had been worn smooth by generations of hands. The Sarkathy in the audience rose to their feet in amazement. They recognized that blade. It was the Krenthing, the honor weapon of Thorax's family, carried by 17 generations of warriors who had each proven themselves worthy in battle. No outsider had ever held that blade. No non-Sarkathy had ever been offered that honor. The Krenthing was a symbol of absolute trust, given only to those who had earned a place in the family's inner circle. "Among my people," Thorax said, his voice thick with emotion that he rarely showed, "this blade is given only to those we would trust at our backs in the long dark, the moments when death is certain and only true. Packmates can be relied upon to stand firm." He held the blade out to Lena, offering it handle first in the traditional gesture of respect. "You are Pack, Lena Vasquez. You have always been Pack. We simply did not recognize our own." The hall erupted in shocked whispers as Lena reached out and accepted the blade with steady hands. She felt the weight of it, the history in it, the honor it represented. For a moment, her composure wavered and her eyes grew bright with unshed tears. But she was a human, and humans had been accepting dangerous responsibilities since the first members of her species picked up sharp rocks and decided to hunt things bigger than themselves. She blinked the moisture away and looked up at her instructor with a smile that was somehow both gentle and fierce. "Thank you, Instructor," she said, her voice calm and warm and filled with absolute certainty. "I will make sure to keep up." Behind her, the collected predators of Class Null 7 straightened with pride. They had all seen what Lena could do, had all learned to respect the relentless determination that drove her forward no matter what obstacles stood in her way. She had earned their loyalty in the training arena, and they would follow her anywhere. Voreth stepped forward, the massive Sarkathy who had once collapsed at her feet during the endurance gauntlet. "Wherever you go," he rumbled, "we go with you. That is what Pack means." Cirith moved to stand beside him, the Valesi hunter who had learned the hard way that humans could stalk even the most skilled trackers. "You have proven yourself worthy," she hissed. "We will not forget." Chitrix and the other Krethvar took their places, their mandibles clicking in the pattern that meant loyalty and brotherhood. Drexus, who had once accidentally wounded her, bowed his massive head in a gesture of respect. One by one, every member of Class Null 7 acknowledged their human packmate. The dignitaries watched in stunned silence as the galaxies, Deadliest predators declared their allegiance to a being that most of them would have dismissed as harmless prey. This was not how the universe was supposed to work. The strong were supposed to dominate the weak, not embrace them as equals. But perhaps some of the wiser observers realized that was exactly the point. Perhaps strength was not just about claws and fangs and venom. Perhaps true strength was about the will to keep going when others would stop. About the ability to turn rivals into allies. About the determination to stand firm even when facing creatures that should have terrified you. The ceremony concluded with traditional words and formal gestures, but everyone present knew that something unprecedented had occurred. A new kind of warrior had joined the galactic community, and nothing would ever be quite the same. Later that evening, after the celebrations had ended and the graduates had departed for their various assignments, a junior administrator in Central Records processed a routine update to the species file for Homo sapiens. The update had been requested by Senior Combat Instructor Thorax Krenthimps himself, and it consisted of a simple classification change and a brief warning. The file now read, Classification Update. Apex Predator verified. Do not underestimate. Do not run. They will follow. And somewhere across the galaxy, aboard a transport ship heading toward her first real assignment, Ensign Lena Vasquez sat among her packmates and smiled. She did not know what challenges awaited her in the stars ahead, but she knew that she would face them the same way she faced everything else, one step at a time, steady and relentless, never stopping until the job was done. That was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to be Pack. And the galaxy, whether it was ready or not, was about to learn exactly what that meant.